If your sense of what's happening in the world right now is anything like mine, what happened in Congress last Thursday on the eve of our Independence Day felt like a huge gut punch. Nearly 250 years into this experiment in freedom and democracy, many of our siblings in positions of power are inclined to limit, reverse, or thwart efforts to expand this aspirational movement towards an inclusive community grounded in love and care for one another. Our journey towards a more perfect union and a beloved community has hit another stumbling block, which is unfortunate, yet not surprising. We've been here before. For the overwhelming breadth of our history, socioeconomic power has rested in the hands of what I call the unenlightened few who feel entitled to manipulate and control natural resources and unnatural weapons to their benefit without serious regard for the welfare of others. Is this God's plan? I don't know. Is it man's plan? Maybe for some, but not for the majority. I think the majority of us simply want to enjoy the beauty and the benefits of this beautiful and bountiful gift we call planet Earth. So I personally sense a need to acknowledge the collective trauma that has happened and continues to happen under our stewardship. I sense a yearning to lament our missteps as well as our perceived losses. I think our grief is real, it's palpable, and we need to embrace it. So, if we could, can we all just take a moment, to attempt to be in a state of lament? Can we close our eyes for a moment and try to remember? Just close your eyes. Remember. Remember. Remember who you are. Remember where you came from. Remember that we all come from the same source, the same emanation, and we also come from the source of all possibilities. I don't know what our ultimate next steps will be, but I intuit that the work we do, which is simply the lives we live, will be a waste of time if it's not grounded in love, inclusive of all, no exceptions. We are each on our prodigal journey home, sisters and brothers, each of us. May we return to love. May our minds be healed. May we all be blessed. And may we find our way home from the pain to peace, from fear to love, and if you will, from hell to heaven. So be it. So when I heard the news from Congress on Thursday, my heart sank and I had another restless night of sleep. My primary sources for spiritual strength and sustenance these days come from primarily three sources: Marianne Williamson, Father Richard Rohr, and Dr. William Barber. And on the morning of July 4th, I turned to all of them, and they didn't disappoint. So I've decided to share what Bill Barber and Father Richard Rohr had to say, because for me, it captures the moment. Okay, the following was actually written by Dr. Bill Barber and a colleague, Jonathan Wilson Hartgrove, and this is what they wrote on July 4th. On America's 249th anniversary of declaring freedom from tyranny, a would-be king will celebrate Independence Day by signing a budget bill that Americans oppose 2-1. This big, ugly bill that was passed by Republicans in Congress this week will make the largest cuts to health care and nutrition assistance in our nation's history, to pay for tax cuts for people who do not need them, and an assault on our communities by masked men who are disappearing our neighbors to concentration camps. The dystopian scene is enough to make any true believer in liberty and equality question whether they can celebrate Independence Day at all. But it would be a betrayal of our moral inheritance to not remember the true champions of American freedom on this day. Indeed, to forget them would mean losing the moral resources we need to revive American democracy. As bad as things are, we cannot forget that others faced worse with less resources than we have. We are not the first Americans to face a power-drunk minority in public office, determined to hold power at any cost. This was the everyday reality of Black Americans in the Mississippi Delta for nearly a century after the Klan and white conservatives carried out the Mississippi Plan in the 1870s, erasing the gains of Reconstruction and enshrining white supremacy into law. When Miss Fannie Lou Hamer decided to join the freedom movement in Sunflower County, Mississippi, she knew two things. First, the majority of people in Sunflower County despised the policies of Senator James O. Eastland, and Eastland's party had the votes to get whatever they wanted written into law. The day she dared attempt to register to vote, Ms. Hamer lost her home. When she attended a training to learn how to build a movement that could vote, she was thrown into the Winona jail and nearly beaten to death. Still, Ms. Hamer did not bow. Instead, she leaned into the gospel blues tradition that had grown out of the Delta, spreading the good news that God is on the side of those who do not look away from the world's troubles, but trust that a force more powerful than tyrants is on the side of the oppressed and can make a way out of no way to redeem the soul of America. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. She sang, and a generation of college students came to sing with her during Freedom Summer. Their mission was to register voters and teach the promises of democracy to Mississippi's Black children in freedom schools. On July 4th, 1964, Ms. Hamer hosted a picnic for Black and white volunteers who dedicated their summer to nonviolently facing down fascism on American soil. They celebrated the promise that all are created equal, even as they face death for living as if it were true. Those same young people who were at Hamer's July 4th picnic went on to launch the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party and take their challenge all the way to the Democratic National Convention in Atlantic City that August. I question America, Ms. Hamer said in her testimony that aired on the national news coverage during that convention. Is this America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our phones off the hooks because our lives are threatened daily, because we want to live as decent human beings? Is this America? Hamer and her Democratic Party didn't win the seats they demanded at the 1964 convention, but Atlantic City would be the last convention to seat an all-white delegation from Mississippi. Just a year later, as part of the war on poverty, Congress passed the Medicare and Medicaid Act, expanding access to health care to elderly and low-income Americans, an expansion that Trump is rolling back half a century later in an immoral betrayal of the very people he promised to champion in his fake populist appeal to poor and working people. There's nothing un-American about questioning a fascism that defies the will of the people to terrorize American communities and assert control. It has been the moral responsibility of moral leaders from Frederick Douglass, who asked, what to the slave is the 4th of July? What to the slave is the 4th of July? To those who are asking today how Americans are supposed to celebrate when their elected leaders sell them out to billionaires and send masked men to assault their communities, Ms. Hamer is a vivid reminder of the moral wisdom that grows out of the Delta. It teaches us that those who question America when we allow fascists to rule are not un-American. They are, in fact, the people who have helped America become more of what she claims to be. So, this 4th of July, may we all gather with Fannie Lou Hamer and the moral fusion family closest to us, both the living and the dead, to recommit ourselves to a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Yes, America's fascists have the power today. They will throw a party at our house and desecrate the memory of so many who've worked to push us toward a more perfect union. But they will not own our Independence Day. As long as we remember the moral tradition that allowed Fannie Lou Hamer to host a July 4th picnic while she battled the fascism of Jim Crow, we have access to the moral resources we need to reconstruct American democracy today. This is how old folks in the black church and black homes beat out their pain. This little light of mine, you can pat your thigh. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Richard Rohr, Father Richard Rohr, one of the major contemplative scholars of our time, teaches that a deeper understanding of freedom and liberation are needed today. Rohr shines a light on emancipation, as he writes, I would use the word emancipation to describe the kinds of freedom and liberation that are needed today. Instead of focusing on personal freedoms only, emancipation directs our attention to a systemic level of freedom. With the exception of the very few who are fully emancipated, we each live inside our own smaller security systems of culture, era, political opinion, and even some quiet, subtle agreements of which we may not even be aware. Political and economic liberties such as free speech, free markets, and the freedom to be secure and defend ourselves can only offer us as much freedom as we ourselves have earned from the inside. If we haven't achieved the inner freedom to love, we are totally dependent on outer systems which paradoxically can never fully deliver the very freedoms they promise. Our inability to recognize this has made our so-called freedoms very selective, class-based, often dishonest, and open to bias. For example, we are really free to imagine that there could be better alternatives to our free market system. Are we really free to imagine that there could be better alternatives to our free market system? We're likely to be called dangerous or un-American if we dare broach the topic. We believe in free speech, but many are becoming afraid to speak freely. Does our freedom to protect ourselves with guns, gun rights, and limitless military spending give us the right and freedom to use the vast majority of the economic resources of our country for our protection? Even if it means not providing food, health care, or education for the same people we say we are securing. When we place all our identity in our one country, security system, religion, or ethnic group, we are unable to imagine another way of thinking. Only citizenship in a much larger realm of God can emancipate us from the confinement of certain well-hidden yet agreed-upon boxes we have labeled freedom. In fact, because these are foundational cultural agreements, we hardly even recognize them as boxes. Such boxes are good, helpful, and even necessary sometimes. But my job and the job of Christian wisdom is to remind us that we are fellow citizens with the saints and part of God's household. We have been called to live in the biggest box of all, while still working and living practically inside the smaller boxes of society. That is a necessarily creative and difficult tension, yet it is really the only way we can enjoy all levels of freedom. In the world, but not of the world, was a historic phrase commonly used by many Christians, whereas today, most of us tend to be in the system, of the system, and for the system, without really even realizing it. So let's use the word emancipation to describe a deeper, bigger, and scarier level of freedom. Inner, outer, personal, economic, structural, and spiritual. Surely this is the task of our entire lifetime, and may it be so. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Melt me, mold me, fill me, use me. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Okay, I think I'm going to end this with my daily meditation, my meditation from this morning. So this is actually from Marianne Williamson, and this is a reflection based on A Course of Miracles. I am never abandoned and never lost. I am held in the arms of God. I am never abandoned and never lost. I am held in the arms of God. At times it feels I am alone in a dangerous world. I am hurt by life and cannot feel the embrace of a loving God. Yet such times as these cry out for faith. A sun that is eclipsed is not a sun forever hidden. A sun that is eclipsed is not a sun forever hidden. God never turns his face from me, nor rejects my prayers. God's Spirit resides within my mind to guide my thoughts to the thoughts of peace. I am never without God's comfort. I am never separate from the source of my creation. May my internal teacher remind me always that I am one with God. I am not separate or apart from love. I bend my thoughts in the direction of love for myself and others, that I might be delivered from the pain of a fearful world. So be it. I am never abandoned and never lost. I am held in the arms of God.